So, a strong rumor circling that a fight will be announced between UFC legend Alexander the GOAT Volkanovski and UFC rising star Movsar Evloev for UFC 333 at UFC 330 this weekend. It's extremely believable. I think that's what, in fact, will happen. Movsar Evloev, in my opinion, has been the ghost chasing Alexander Volkanovski for years, while he's been champion, which has been a long time. Yes, there was a brief stint where he had lost to Ilya, but then Ilya, not so long after, vacated his title, and Volk won it back against Diego Lopez. And ever since then, Volk's been dominating. He fought Diego again, beat Diego again. And it's another testament to how great he is. Alexander Volkanovski is one of the best fighters to ever do it. In my opinion, he's the most well-rounded fighter to ever do it. He's the fighter that has incorporated such a perfect balance of grappling and striking. It's like the Avatar, the way he mixes everything together. I think he is the standard of a legendary MMA fighter. I think there are fighters that are higher all time than him, like a Islam Makhachev or a John Jones, but that's because an Islam and a John are able to, pinpoint and utilize a specific tool in their chest. I think Volk uses every tool kind of the same amount. I know that may seem like a bit of a hot take, but if you truly rewatch his excellent performances, you'll see how effortlessly he can mix things up. Watch his fight against Yair Rodriguez. I get it, a large amount of that fight was Volk dominating Yair on the ground, but even on the feet, Volk was able to outwork Yair. So I do think Volk is the most well-rounded fighter that's ever graced the octagon. I think there are others that have come close, like Ilya, like Arman. There are other fighters that can blend the ground game and the stand-up pretty much perfectly. But Volk, in my opinion, does it like no other. But again, while Volk has had the title, Movsar has been that what-if scenario. That guy that's been rumored to be the answer to Volk. And there have been other answers to Volk. Like I said, Ilya beat him, but I think that was primarily that more so had something to do with power. Sure, Ilya's technique is also really, really tight, and that helped him utilize the power to the best of his ability and get that knockout against Volk. But I'm talking about a fighter that can soundly defeat Alexander Volkanovski. Kind of like what Islam was able to do. But even in Islam's case, he was able to get the head kick and turn Volk's lights out rather than just, round after round outstrike him, which he kind of almost did in the first fight. But Volk turned that fight into a dogfight where Volk was doing the same thing to Islam. So, yeah, it's extremely hard, if not impossible, to truly outwork Alexander Volkanovski and just, render him useless round after round. But I've heard rumors about, Evloev being the guy to do so. Evloev being rumored to be Volk's true kryptonite, the man that can outwork Alexander the GOAT Volkanovski from rounds 1 through 5. And I don't necessarily think that take is ridiculous. Movsar Evloev has proven many fights over that he is championship quality, that he has skill going through the roof, especially on the ground. He's so, he's such a natural grappler. The way he's able to reverse positions and take advantage of bad positions, it's beautiful to watch. It's beautiful to watch. His fight against Aljamain Sterling, chef's kiss. On the feet, Evloev is no pushover, and that's saying the least. Evloev is a really, world-class striker on the feet, in my opinion. He's a really well-rounded fighter. And when I think about this fight, I think about Joshua Van versus Alexandre Pantoja. I think about a real student versus master fight. Although Volk and Evloev haven't been as close as a student would be to his master, I see shades of Volk in Evloev. Granted, Evloev is from a different cultural background, so therefore his style is kind of a bit different as well. But, I see Evloev performing at such a, high level in terms of well-roundedness. I can't help but see shades of Volk. I can't help but see shades of Volk. So when I think about this fight, I get a bit scared for Volk because I'm obviously going to root for Volk. I'm more of a Volk fan, although I do have a lot of respect for Movsar Evloev. I'm scared for Volk here because I do see Evloev as, this up-and-coming rising star form of Alexander Volkanovski. And when I think about a fight between these two guys, I think about a neck-and-neck dog match that really could go either way. But seemingly does have a fairly decent chance to go Evloev's way, given how gifted the guy has been looking, and like I said, Evloev, I say Evloev's the ghost that's been chasing Volk for a long time, because Evloev has been denied a title shot time after time, despite deserving one for years. I think it has something more to do with follower count. I think Movsar Evloev isn't a widely known name in the MMA world even today, given the rumors about him getting this next title shot against Volk. I think, it's not entirely Movsar's fault, but he could be, taken to the social media a bit more than he has. But some fighters are like that. Some fighters are more quiet. Some fighters are more introverted. But the UFC sadly has this standard when it comes to title shots where, behind the scenes, you may have to have a certain number of Instagram followers to get one. So Movsar has been denied a title shot for years. And now he's finally, seemingly going to get one, which means the ghost is finally becoming a widely known entity. It's not like its existence isn't being denied anymore. People are starting to take notice. The UFC has finally started to take notice of Movsar Evloev. They're finally, seemingly, going to give Movsar his title shot at last. So the ghost that's been following Volk, that's been paired to Volk's name in conversation, is finally going to get his test. Now in Volk's case, because now I'll go over, what does this fight mean to each fighter? In Volk's case, I think this is his test to see whether or not he's top 5 of all time material, maybe top 3. When I think about this test and whether or not Volk can get past it, if he does get past it, he may have to be top 3, top 4. I think it's a top 3, top 4 situation for Volk. Evloev, obviously, this is his chance at a title. This is a chance to become a champion. This is his chance to become a pretty well-known name in the MMA world once he gets his hands on a title, Like I said, he's not the most outspoken fighter, so I'm not sure how much notoriety, and fame he can make off of winning a title, but he's going to become a name afterward. People are going to know. A lot of people will then know who Movsar Evloev is. If you were to ask me how the fight goes, like I said, it's a neck-and-neck fight. It's a dog fight. I think it's a fight that's going to be extremely hard to judge by the end of it. I think both fighters are going to have big moments. I can't help but see Evloev connecting on a big shot against Volk, like a shot that Volk will have to spend some time recovering from. But I do think he will fully recover from it. I see moments where Volk is knocking the head of Evloev back, but not really hitting a big shot that kind of drops Evloev. On the ground, I see it just being a neck-and-neck fight where they go, they go halvesies on takedowns. They're getting the same amount of takedowns. They're getting the same, maybe dang near the same amount of ground control time, a lot of position reversals. I don't think anybody's going to get in a submission attempt. But it'll be a fair scrap on the ground, one that's especially hard to judge. Almost as hard to judge as the fight that will go on the feet. It'll go to a judge's decision, in which it will likely be a split decision. And in that split decision, I'm going to go with Volk. I'm going to go with Volk, and I can't even tell you why the judges will go with Volk, because I think afterward the decision is going to be quite controversial. And people are going to say that they scored, a lot of people will say they scored the fight for Evloev. But I think it'll maybe be like an extra few seconds of ground control time or an extra landed punch or kick. By kick, I mean leg kick. Or maybe head kick. That will be scored for Volk. That will give Volk the decision win. By just a millimeter, Volk will win the fight. And it'll the result will likely warrant a rematch because, like I said, a lot of people will likely say, "Oh, I scored this fight for Evloev. Evloev really won the fight." Yada yada yada. But this will be a fight of skill. This will be a fight of IQ. And in a fight like that, I cannot go against Volk. Even with the smartest of fighters like Movsar Evloev, likely is. I think Volk will come out on top. It'll be a test. It'll be a dogfight. But it will be a fight that Volk isn't prepared for. He's one of the greatest fighters ever for a reason. He's one of the most well-rounded fighters ever for a reason. He blends everything effortlessly. He's got a brilliant mind for the game. And that's why Mauricio Hufi has gotten so great, has made such a drastic improvement, because he's decided to leave the Fighting Nerds, which was a crap club, and he decided to learn under one of the greatest fighters of all time in Alexander the Goat Volkanovski, and that's improved his performance level drastically. And it will show when he fights Arman Tsarukyan. Overall, this will be a good fight. Solid test for the Goat Volkanovski. A hard test, one that I think Volk will still win and likely have to face again in a rematch. Maybe not, because again, the UFC doesn't really see a lot of stardom from Movsar. But this will be Movsar's big break, one that I think he'll sadly fail. But, in the end, my GOAT, Alexander the Goat Volkanovski, is going to come out on top. Let me know what you think.